What is going on, Movie Meals? Movie Meals, we're here for some Star Wars. If my cat's right back here, he hates this thing. It freaks him out. So he's
He
got his
always was on
eyes
the dark
just
side.
beating on me. We're here for Ahsoka and Star Wars. I have nowhere to put this now that I'm standing. Trying to figure that out. Pay your actors, or I'm coming with one of these bad boys, and I am taking you down. You hear me, Bob?
He will do it.
All right, I guess this is headed to the floor. Thank you, movie patrons, Kimberly, Karen. Guys, we're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers. Help us do that by liking and sharing. We're going to give one lucky fan a free Movie Meals hoodie, who comments on the videos, does all that good stuff. So this will be, I think this will be a spoiler review for Ahsoka. We'll talk about some spoilers. So if you have not finished the Ahsoka show, hit this in your watch laters, come back. We'll kind of just do this off the cuff here. Positive, negative, doesn't really matter, but we'll just start with Kyle. Kyle, what are some of your thoughts right off the top of your head about this Ahsoka show? Dave Filoni, the GOAT. What did you think?
It's okay. It was fine. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I understood what the show was trying to do, especially around like episode 4 or 5. I realized that the show was supposed to be about Ahsoka trying to go back to who she was, just after all of the traumas in regards to her master Anakin turning into Darth Vader and that being a whole thing, plus her circumstances when it comes to the good and the bad of being in the Jedi Order, just really took a toll on her, and you felt that once you realize that that's the story that it was being told, like you felt that and you understood why the character acted and was portrayed the way that she was in the first half of the show. And then that part was at least the most interesting, I would say, as at least for probably someone who has seen Clone Wars and Rebels. It probably was interesting, such as myself, but yeah, good angle to take for continuing the story of Ahsoka. But aside from that, I don't really have that many takeaways outside of Baylan being a great villain character in the background, though. Like I really liked him, and it's unfortunate that Ray Stevenson passed away,
RIP.
so we couldn't see his portrayal continue on, as well as many other roles he could have done. But yeah, I guess those are my strongest positives of the show. I thought visually, when it comes to the visual effects, they did look pretty good for the most part. I am sick of the grayscales and like the ugly backgrounds. Like I want color to come back again, especially for Star Wars. But visually with like the space whales or how the ships traveled and all those other Star Wars elements, I thought that those looked pretty good. So yeah, I guess those are my main positives when it comes to Ahsoka, but otherwise, I don't know, just kind of lacked something to really feel like a much better show than it could have been.
As the resident Star Wars man here, if it wasn't for game day with the birds, I'd be sporting my Star Wars hat right now for an Ahsoka review, but I liked the show quite a bit. I think that it does have some issues and some things left that kind of, we don't get told as much. R.I.P. to Ray Stevens. He was an excellent Sith, and it's very clear, I think, that he wanted to do this mission because of whatever in this galaxy is calling to him. That's something new and different is calling to him, and I do think he will get recast. I think that role will end up getting recast. And even with it ends with him at the mountain of looks like, a Sith and a Sith Padawan or, someone training, or whether that's supposed to be a Jedi pointing in a certain direction. I think that's great. I got to remember the name of...
So while you're looking
Shin,
for that...
I already found it. Shin,
Oh, okay.
Her character showing up to take over kind of leader of this warrior group. I liked that ending for her. I think she is also a very interesting Sith, and then they're not full Sith, really, to me. I love the line where Baylan says, I miss the idea of the Jedi. I miss the idea, and I think they're setting up for something really good. I'm not really sure what it is that is so powerful out here that is scaring Thrawn. Some people think that he is headed to where the origin of the Force kind of started, and that we're, you know, it's either first, like, somebody first tapped into it, or, like, I guess it was born. I don't know if we'll go the science route where, like, you know, we get a Big Bang version of the Force, but I do like that back to Shin, her version of power is just in command. And so she is now in command. I like that Ahsoka and Sabine are left on the planet and they just flip-flop with Ezra. I did not like Ezra showing up on the ship and stays in his gear. I don't really get why he stayed in costume walking into a new Republic fighter. That didn't make sense. The fact that they didn't run and hug and they stayed in more of the shock, I think might have been a poor choice by Dave Filoni to go with. I think more of a sprint hug, like this is your master's girl, like this, you've been through so much with her and you're just going to stand and stare. I do think the actor who played Ezra, Aman Esfandi, was excellent. And the more I watched him as Ezra, the more I sat there going, this guy really embodied Ezra. I started watching some clips of some of my favorite Ezra moments from the Clone Wars to get back to, like, the character from Rebels, to get back to the Rebels character. And I was like, this guy must have watched the whole show twice over to get into the mindset. Like, he rocked it. I think they all did a very good job. I loved the stuff with Hayden Christensen, the world between worlds. I thought that was excellent for Ahsoka. I do think, I agree with you. I miss, you know, the feeling of The Force Awakens when, you know, Rey has the kind of funny line of, I didn't think there was this much green in the whole galaxy, and it's like a gorgeous planet. There's a lot of sun out. It's bright. It's cool. I do miss that. I feel like we've been to a lot of gray or, like, just pure desert, and we haven't seen a lot of the beauty, the Naboo of Star Wars in a while, and I do miss that. But anyway, before I continue rambling, you got any thoughts you want to interject here?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned both Baylan and Shin, because they were, like, the great secondary antagonists that you could tell have, like, an interesting thing about them. I haven't seen a lot of people, not criticizing, but just wanting more of them. They feel like they're kind of shoehorned to the side, especially towards the tail end, like the last third of the show. But I don't know, at the same time, it kind of reminds me of Avatar, The Last Airbender, in a way, to where,
makes sense,
like, Zuko and his uncle, they're the antagonists. They're not the main antagonists, but they are the antagonists of the first season. But you can feel there's something interesting about them and their relationship. And then over time, as we get more seasons, more episodes of the show, it really grows and blossoms. And I feel like that could be the arc. I'm not sure. I imagine this is probably going to be a season, not a limited series, but probably a longer series. Might get like a season 2 or whatever. I imagine that with the recasting of Baylan, we could see more of them. So I'm okay with being patient and seeing what more of their character arcs is going to be done. And I can also agree with you about the actor who played Ezra, but I'm not sure if I can say the same for the rest of the Rebels characters. There just was something about the portrayals that just felt too stoic. Are you talking about
for Sabine and Hera and
Yeah.
Ahsoka, or just Sabine and Hera?
Sabine and Hera, I initially thought the same for Ahsoka, but then once I saw what the arc or what her story was supposed to be, and that after meeting Anakin within the Force thing, whatever it is, then she starts to become like her old self again. Then I was like, okay, I'm fine with what they did for that character, but for the rest of the Rebels characters, I just felt they were too stoic and wooden instead of having like more emotion within their performance I would have liked. And I don't know if it's like the actual performances themselves or if it's because I'm used to how they were portrayed in like a voice acting way compared to like a live action way. But I wonder if, and it seems like you feel differently, that you thought that they were portrayed very well, but for me, I don't know, something was missing.
I don't disagree with you. I think that they are a little less, like, Ezra's cracking jokes right away. Hera and Sabine stay very stoic, and they don't necessarily get a full-fledged arc like Ahsoka, who does. Ahsoka goes through a whole 2-episode trial of learning, and Ahsoka doesn't show as much. She stays very stoic, but also kind of that thing. But Ezra is quippy. He's funny. But thinking back to Rebels, I'm not sure Hera and Sabine ever were anything different. I actually am thinking that they probably have played the characters very well, but when you're not with Chopper the whole time, when you're not with Ezra the whole time, when you're not with I should know this off the top of my head. I can't think of his name. What is the name of the other guy they're with? I'm pretty sure it starts with an
Oh,
S.
the pilot?
Yeah, he showed up in was Zeb. I was wrong. I was close. Zeb with Zeb.
Oh, not the
I
pilot.
think
Okay.
he's very funny, and so it offsets when Sabine and Kanan and Hera are much more the adult leader. I'm gonna do this, and they kind of just focus. So I think that it had a hard time translating. I do agree on that point. I don't think they did a bad job. I think they just were handed a different style. They weren't given humor. The best Sabine is when she meets Ezra. Sabine does start to show a little bit more of that, and they have this banter back and forth, and I like that a lot. Hera doesn't get that as much. Hera's very much I'm a general now. So I do like your comparison with Zuko and Iroh to Balin and Shin. Sorry. I think that is a good one. Makes sense. Dave Filoni worked on the first season of Avatar. I just finished reading How Star Wars Conquered the Universe, and they briefly talk about how Dave Filoni on the set of Avatar Last Airbender just would not stop telling everyone how much he loves Star Wars. And that eventually when they heard they were making the Clone Wars show, they were like, oh, you should talk to this guy, George. This guy just nonstop talks Star Wars all day, and he's a really good animator. But anyway, I do think the show does work. I think when you compare all the shows we've gotten, I think this is probably second to Andor in myself. Maybe it's recency biased, but I do like more of this than even some of the stuff in Kenobi, and I really liked Kenobi. And I like Mando, but Mando has started to struggle. The biggest flaw I have with the show is it feels too spectacular. I think this would have been better in the theater as a movie, set in one thing, and it's one mission to go get Ezra, and we cut out a little bit of the fat. I think some of the issue we have with characters would have worked better in 2.5 hours, and I think that is an issue. I watched this just sitting there going, this should have been on the big screen. And I know they released one episode on the big screen, didn't do it in my city. Why the heck did I move to a major city and not get it? That's my question. But I think this is a glaring thing, and I think it's one of the few things Bob Iger is planning to do right since coming back to take over. Star Wars and Marvel need to be back on the big screen, and Star Wars needs to be back on the big screen, because I do think this would have worked way better as a movie. Andor worked very well as a show. Mando, I'm starting to feel, I don't know. I don't know if Mando has its own issues, but I watched and I was like, this is a movie. Dave wrote this as a movie. You could have trimmed the fat, and you could have probably made something very special with this one-off mission. Yeah. And I liked Thrawn. I do want to throw that out there with Mikkelsen. I think he did do a decent job as Thrawn. Thrawn, I actually thought translated the hardest to live action, but I did like him. I thought he was very calculating, very much the character. It's a little easier when it's the same actor portraying him in voice to live action. But I did think he's good. I'm real curious to see what they're doing. Dave is doing a movie next. I kind of hope the continuation is the movie and not a season 2. But yeah, any other thoughts, Kyle, you got right off the top of your head?
I wish I liked Thrawn more. Not in terms of the performance, because Mikkelsen was really good, but I just felt like in the story itself, it just didn't feel like this looming threat that I remember him being in Rebels. And maybe it's that translation thing again, but just something in that climax just did not get me.
I agree with the overarching threat, but I don't think, and I think, maybe that's the big issue here, because I don't think Dave wrote him to feel that way in this, which is interesting. And I think that's why he feels flat and why Balin feels so much cooler. Because Thrawn doesn't feel like this overarching thing, because he doesn't have the fleet with him. He doesn't have the upper hand. He is playing from behind and then gets the upper hand on the characters, but he's playing from behind. And maybe that's part of the reason with the way Dave wrote him. I don't know. I'm just kind of talking out of my butt here, but
No, it could be a good point. It just was frustrating as like a returning viewer of that character, and I can imagine for like a first time viewer, like if this was their introduction to Ahsoka and Thrawn, then that probably would be even more frustrating because I could imagine you watching it and being like, there's kind of something there, but I'm not feeling like this could be a bigger threat down the road. That's kind of what I was going back to. This show just lacks a little bit of juice to like really make this more exciting, make it more engaging. Instead, everything just feels, ugh. We're gonna
again,
find Ezra.
I do think
Okay.
a movie fixes some of it. Not saying it fixes all of it, but I think when you watch The World Between Worlds and you're like, this is amazing, and then it cuts and you have a week to wait, and then the next episode isn't as much, you're kind of like, ugh, like I missed that last episode. But in a movie, when you hit that climax, it makes sense that now you're on the decline when you make those cuts and those changes, and now you're doing something different where you get up to the big last battle. But I do love Sabine's arc a little bit at the end. I really love her at the end. I think she grows a lot at the end, and I want more because I think she's starting to get there. She accepts Ahsoka, accepts her powers a little bit, and she's able to use the Force stronger. And I love that Dave is showing all these casuals who don't understand the Force how the Force works, that everyone can tap into the Force. I love that Ahsoka explains that to her. Everyone can get the Force. George Lucas has always described it as yoga. There's going to be people who are way more flexible than you, but everybody can do yoga. And I think that's the best way to describe the Force. Very curious to see what they will do moving forward, but I really think it's time to get Star Wars back on the big screen, man.
Oh yeah.
I don't care if Dave Filoni is going to do some Avengers style thing with all these TV characters. I don't really care. Make me a really good movie. I miss it so much. I want to feel that way again of going and watching a Star Wars movie really rock it. Because I don't think that's happened since God forbid, episode 7, or episode 8. But I like episode 8. I'm about to rewatch all the movies. It's what we're watching Haiku. We're gonna finally catch up to Haiku, and then it's gonna be straight into Star Wars. We're gonna take a break from TV and watch all the Star Wars movies in order, and I'm excited to do that because I've been missing it. But especially after reading the book, reading 2 books back to back on George Lucas, then just how important and how incredible Star Wars is amazing. Some of the stuff from back in the day is wild. I mean, in the book, he talks about and pulls receipts of people who complained so much about certain things in the 80s. Like, wild. People who carved their name into seats. There were people for episode 6 that went and started camping out a month and a half early, and they got kicked out of the parking lot multiple times by the cops. And then when it got close to the showing, all these local places near started giving them stuff. Hey, you guys come over, we'll give you discounts on meals. Somebody gave them laptops just to use to entertain them, and where they ran like a cord. And this is back in like or this was for the Phantom Menace, excuse me. This was for the Phantom Menace, this cord thing. But they gave him a computer, and they ran like a long-ass Ethernet cable out to him, and they watched a pirated version of the holiday special instead of any of the movies, waiting for a Phantom Menace. That's what all these nerds did. And reading that reminded me how great the franchise truly can be and why it was so special in the beginning. And the book came out before really much of the sell to Disney. It did talk about it at the end. But it makes me miss that feeling. I got that feeling from The Force Awakens. I got that feeling from episode 8 myself. I did not get the feeling as much from episode 9. But I will say, watching Dave Filoni do this show made me sit back and go, why on earth did they make Snoke when Thrawn could have been there all along? Like, Thrawn could have just been the big bad. He could have been the heir to the Empire. They could have gone that route, and it would have been way, way, way better, I think, overall. You still could have had Rey. You still could have brought in Kylo. You still could have brought in all these characters, but you could have just done Thrawn. I don't know. But, yeah. Any other thoughts you got?
I still didn't like the choice to bring back Ezra. I still like the mystery and that ending of Rebels. I thought that it was really cool that the show went that way.
Ezra and Thrawn.
Correct. Yes.
You can't
yes.
say one and not. You can't give a
That's-
pass to one. They both go.
No, that's true. You're absolutely right. I did mean Ezra and Thrawn. Excuse me. Bringing him back didn't really do much more for me. But hopefully it does for other people. I just really like the ending of Rebels for what they did. But Hayden Christensen
He was
as
awesome.
Anakin, I thought he was really good. So I was happy to see him get more to shine for that performance. So yeah.
I'd be curious. When was the last time? When did you finish Rebels? When did you watch that episode? It's been probably a while, huh?
Yeah, maybe 2019, 2020 maybe.
I'd be
It has been a
curious
minute.
if you went back now, if you sat back and went, oh, they never made it really that like mystery of where did they go. It's actually pretty, because I don't remember. I'm just saying, I wonder if we go back and watch, if maybe we're both like, wow, they actually really always did set it up for them to go find Ezra and that he was always alive. I'd be real curious if it was just, because I was in that boat too. Obviously, I'm okay with it at the end of the day, but I was in that boat like that they're out there for good. They've died or something like that. And I wonder if we went
Heroic
back and
mystery.
watched that it was always set up for something more, that they were out there and it was a little bit more obvious and we just kind of thought it wasn't as obvious, but just be curious to see.
Sure. That's
Anyway.
fair.
All right, guys, what did you think of the Ahsoka show? Do you agree with Kyle? But Kyle's just a Debbie Downer. You know, post-COVID Kyle's always been awful. And I truly, I was thinking about this the other day. I think DC is to complete blame for the shift in Kyle. I think DC, I got one heck
The
of a
pandemic
theory.
opened my eyes.
I got one heck of a theory maybe we'll bring up on the podcast. But I do think that DC is truly at fault for everything. That Kyle wanted the DCU to be so good, and it was so bad, that now everything bad they did in those movies, he brings into all the other franchises, and he's like, I hate all of it. And I think it all stems back to if Batman v Superman would have just been good. Anyway, guys, what do you think? Comment below, let us know. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. As always, thanks for watching, Mom. Go pay your actors, pay your writers. Don't pay the writers. Actually, you still should.
Well, pay the writers.
Don't give them
pay.
a bonus, but pay your actors. And as always, thanks for watching, Mom.
See you guys.
Post-COVID.